I knew right away that this was going to be a thing.
Hello and welcome to episode 8, season 2 of your Cyber Threat Intelligence podcast. Whether you're a seasoned CTI expert, a cybersecurity professional, or simply curious about the digital battlefield, our expert guests and host will break down complex topics into actionable insights. On this episode of Season 2, our host Pedro Kertzman will chat with Brandon Parsons, who is a retired United States Marine Corps intelligence specialist with over 25 years of expertise in intelligence operations and information warfare. He currently holds the position of Threat Intelligence Manager at Ascent Solutions, an award-winning security services provider. Brandon's areas of expertise include threat forecasting and anticipation, intelligence collections management, intelligence support to detection engineering, vulnerability analysis, open source intelligence, and dark web analysis. Over to you, Pedro.
Brandon, thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate you coming here today and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
We're talking about, a bunch of different topics, but if we can start with some of the main things for me today is a lot of CTI teams are still focusing a lot on CVSS score, for example, but EPSS is actually on the version 4 now, and CISA is actually pushing the SSVC, and so we might have some changes from that point of view. Any, from the CTI standpoint, where you think the real signals are, and where do you think this kind of a vulnerability measurement, or which kind of analysis we're going to use as standards are going to go hopefully in the near future?
Well, I'll tell you, vulnerability management, in my opinion, is probably the hardest part of running a good security ecosystem in a secure environment. And there's never a shortage in things to look at, investigate, and the problem is there's just so much vulnerabilities coming in at one time where you're still trying to keep up with the ones from the previous month and then the month after that. It's, if you don't have a good strategy as it pertains to vulnerability management, there's going to be times and stuff where you're going to realize that this small little snowball is now a giant snowball before you know it. So, but to your question regarding, common vulnerability scoring system or the stakeholder specific vuln categorization, or just exploit prediction scoring system, in my personal opinion, I think those things really much take a network focused, threat agnostic position. Mm-hmm. I think as a CTI analyst, inherently I have to take a threat focused and somewhat slightly network agnostic position. But that doesn't mean though that CVSS, EPSS, and SSVC, aren't tools to help me, add to my calculus as it pertains to what threats, could go after said vulnerability, but no matter what, the scoring systems aside, we have to keep in mind that the threat actors have a say in this too. And as history has shown us, they have their particulars, their favorites, and as soon as a new vulnerability drops, they understand this landscape too. So let me unpackage that a bit. I know that every time a Citrix NetScaler vulnerability that would allow an unauthenticated attacker to, X, Y, and B, whatever the case may be, for that, I already know that it's only a matter of time before one of the various different attack surface management companies or somebody like renowned researcher Kevin Beaumont, comes in and stuff and provides some very good technical analysis of this vulnerability. Mm-hmm. The threat actors know that too, though. So they wait. And a lot of the times, the similar exploits will work against, net new vulnerabilities as they come about. So, but they wait for these technical papers, this technical research to come up with another way to do it, or just to complement something that already exists. Mm-hmm. So
POCs and stuff, right?
I think it's important when it comes to scoring vulnerabilities, to assessing vulnerabilities, but it can't be the primary driver behind getting after vulnerabilities, because the threat has a say in this too. On a very deeply personal note, I will tell you this. There are certain vendors and products that I exclusively screen for every time we onboard new clients, okay? And I'd like to list off some of them, okay? First off, again, Citrix NetScaler. I always ask if they have any of that in their environment, because If you research CISA's KEV and just type in NetScaler, you're going to see years upon years of vulnerabilities that, known ransomware, right? The next ones, of course, are VMware ESXi and vCenter. I always ask for those two. Veeam Backup and Replication. I'm going to cook on this one for a second. I always recommend to all my customers, every time a brand new Veeam Backup and Replication vulnerability comes about, to priority 1 or priority 2 patch this as soon as possible, because it's probably only in a matter of about a week, maybe 10 days, depending on it, before somebody like Watchtower Labs or somebody else drops a technical research paper, and oh, by the way, that becomes quickly a proof of concept exploit, and threat actors really just start dogpiling on them real quick. Mm-hmm. But the reason why threat actors just love the Veeam vulnerability zone, and I don't think people really appreciate this. A lot of the times, the point of having a Veeam backup and replication software and having good Veeam backups is, in the event something does happen, you can fall back on this. Mm-hmm. If I was the threat actor, my chances of getting paid are that much higher if I can hit your Veeam backup and replication, because now I've crippled your entire network if you don't have good backups and stuff that are readily available. And I think that's very key. The other ones, Fortinet, lately, Forti's having a rough year. So Forti just recently made my list of favorite things. But, I say almost monthly to bi-weekly, we see a brand new Forti client, EMS, Forti web, or Forti SSL VPN vulnerability that starts to get attacked and targeted by just a myriad of different threat actors, ranging from state-sponsored APTs, or in some cases, just the e-crime actors that we typically deal with, right? Mm-hmm. I have a note here for Ivanti everything.
Yeah.
So, enough said. Any file sharing service like your Progress software, your Fortran Go Anywhere, GladyNet, CentriStack, all those things have one primary group truly in common that goes after them, and that's CLOP. CLOP really deviated though last year when they started going after the Oracle EBS vulnerabilities. That was pretty interesting. It's very interesting to see that one, and they hit it at scale. The other ones that I always look at are, of course, our RMM software as well.
Oh, yeah.
Remote monitoring and management software is king. If you can exploit that, what was it? The Screen Connect vulnerabilities, and I think it was 2024, like they didn't even get CVEs assigned to them yet before threat actors started dogpiling on them, or it could have been they were already targeting this vulnerability that was in there. And now, like the vulnerability management process and the apportionment of assigning a CVE, has to come about afterwards. But I always thought that was really interesting, and history has really taught us that these aforementioned softwares, they're great products, but that doesn't mean that the threat actors don't take advantage of them, that they don't target them, everywhere else and stuff. Okay. And last but not least, anything on-prem deployment, I look at those and stuff very, very closely as well. So the thing that we learned with Beyond Trust, the things that we've learned with SharePoint, the tool shell vulnerabilities, those quickly got dogpiled on by a bunch of other folks too, So when I think about, just to kind of bring it full circle, I very much so take the threat-focused, networks agnostic, look at these different things. You can have a MaxSev vulnerability, but if it's behind, 3 different tiers of a defensive depth, enterprise organization, then, well, yeah, you should patch it. But the likelihood of somebody hitting this thing, if it's not public facing and it's not really, in your attack surface, your public facing attack surface, then, it's gonna have a much lower score. It's really funny. EPS, I think could be deceptive though, a little bit too, where you can have something with a very high EPSS score, but at the same time, that vulnerability is not, public facing, not discoverable. I can't see it. I can't hit it, or it requires user interaction, to in order to trigger, right? So, you can have the highest EPSS score in the world and stuff, but it really depends on how you have your network set up, and that's really what this boils down to, is how your network is set up, so hopefully that answers that question.
Oh, 100%. And you mentioned some very good points. I'm going to piggyback on some of them. So you mentioned the CAV list. some of us, I call it Kev list. I think it was S2W. They published like a report. They were studying and doing some stats around it. They found that 45% of the CVEs on the Kev list, they were actually discovered 2+ years before they actually got published. The CVEs got published for the first time. So, we have on one hand you also, piggybacking on another thing you mentioned, you also have the exploits that even before the CVEs are published, threat actors are already jumping on it, right? I think Google actually published a report also mentioning that for the first time last year, the time to exploit CVE came from like positive whatever to negative, right? Last year. So meaning before publication, people were like really at scale, exploiting things. But on that other end, right? So 45% of the probably most exploited or seen being exploited vulnerabilities because of the Kev list were actually 2 years or plus old. What is your thoughts about between this kind of a tug of war a little bit, like between patch fast, this is critical, they are already POCing this, or don't stop looking at vulnerabilities just because they're not being dogpiled currently for threat actors?
So I got a couple of things to pull out of that one, and it's a great question too. I'd like to preface though with something that I learned in the Marine Corps. So I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I spent most of my time down in infantry battalions, and then the other half was with information and cyber units and stuff, and a little stint on recruiting duty in Beverly Hills, California too. That was pretty interesting. I'm going to drop some Marine Corps knowledge on you. We got this saying, it says junk in and junk out. Okay. Whether it has to do with managing the normal day-to-day grind or the next bright, shiny object that, our leadership elects to chase, that day, junk in, junk out. Right.
Yeah.
So that saying, unfortunately, does not apply to vulnerability management whatsoever. But I bring it up because of this reason. If we switch out within, junk in, okay? When it comes to vuln management, if you don't do something about it, somebody will in this case. And in this case, it's the threat actor. So going back to that threat focused network agnostic thing, these guys know that, things like Mythos, things like more vulnerabilities, the vulnerability counts every year are only increasing. So the security teams don't have the most ample amount of time to address every single vulnerability. Sometimes, in some cases, it requires a third party to come in there to help you evaluate these things to stay on top of them, right? So about that, though, the Adobe vulnerability, the 0-day that just came about in this month, I think it taught everybody a really interesting lesson, a really, really interesting lesson. Adobe is one of those, programs, that sits in your environment. And if you don't open up if you don't really open it up and you don't actually like update it, or you don't have your Microsoft Intune firing or your Patch My PC firing, that thing is just going to sit there unopened on your desktop. And it's going to accumulate just a multitude of vulnerabilities and stuff over time. And now with this new vulnerability that came about, like everybody had a pretty good reason if they were actually paying attention to patch their Adobe, or in our case, we talk to our customers about it for our threat and vulnerability management as a service offering that we have. We basically told them, like, you've got over X amount of vulnerability specific Adobe specific vulnerabilities in your environment. Do you really need Adobe Reader as an application? Because you have things like Edge where you can open up your Adobe document if you need to. You have things like Chrome that you can open up an Adobe document. In fact, you can probably edit the Adobe document from these two things, And it was pretty interesting. It was, I'd like to call it, back to the Marine Corps terminology, a decision point. But for those folks who said, no, we need Adobe, it's fine, we're going to patch it, and they actually did patch it, and they brought it up to its most current version, if they have any kind of vulnerability management service or something that tracks the amount of CVEs that you have in there, they all just put a significant dent in the net, total quantity of vulnerabilities that they have in their environment by releasing a patch and pushing it across the entire enterprise. Because depending on how big the enterprise is and how many workstations actually have Adobe installed that required, the update for Adobe Reader, there's probably a good chance that more than nearly all of them had not been updated for years. So, and then you multiply that by, each workstation, and now you've got quite the quantifiable amount of CVEs that just kind of fell off your radar and stuff because you had a reason, this 0 day, to exploit. That was under active exploitation, but very limited. You actually had a good reason to get after it. And it's pretty interesting, right? So I wanted to use that to kind of scope and shape, to how to answer your question. The KEV is a good list. It's a good list. It's a good list. We're confirming that if said vulnerability that you're evaluating has any kind of history of exploit behind it, but that's about it. It's a good baseline to use and stuff, but it's not. I would say I wouldn't say it's the standard. And I say that because there's plenty of vulnerabilities that get exploited before they make their way onto the KEV, but a lot of times people use the KEVs like, well, I have this vulnerability, it's a 9.8 and an unauthenticated attacker can do X, Y, and B, stuff on it, but it's not in the KVE. So I guess I can go chase after this one that is on the KVE that some random state-sponsored APT hit a year ago, and they went after another government organization, and I'm part of a retail organization. You see what I mean? That could be so. Context is key when it comes to this stuff. Although the KVE, has that level set baseline that you can use and stuff when you're looking at a vulnerability and you're analyzing it, it's not the end all be all. It's not the standard. The real standard is using your other tools to take a look at things. So, and I think that I like to get into the vulnerability itself. I like to research specifically and look at the language that's in the vulnerability, right? And I also like to take a look at where that thing sits within the attack surface, and I think that's the most important thing, is really looking at that. So combining CVSS, EPSS, and actually taking a look, well, this group hit something very similar to that, that's important. Going back to the Adobe vulnerability, even though whoever was, throwing that thing as and exploiting it, against the Russian-speaking audience, that doesn't mean, though, that researchers upon researchers did not put forth a whole bunch of technical analysis talking specifically about that CVE before it got a CVE assigned, right? On top of that, you also have a whole bunch of proof of concepts now specifically for that CVE sitting out there publicly available as well. What's stopping one threat actor from coming up with his own weaponizer and using that against a widely available, probably most widely available Adobe Reader vulnerability and coming up with their own exploit? So that's what I was watching for. Well, after obviously I published our report, over the weekend too, because I think Adobe dropped the vulnerability on a Saturday, and the world was graced with this wonderful vulnerability on the Sunday morning. So right before church, it's like shoot the report out. It's like, okay. Anyway, so where I'm really heading with this though is context is key. Context is super key, and the threat actors, they're watching, and they, I learned something when I was in Afghanistan. A Taliban leader once said, "You can own the watch, but we'll own the time." And the same rules really apply with threat actors too, especially if they're waiting to, coming up with exploits for vulnerabilities that are 2 years old, people have probably forgotten about those vulnerabilities at this point. They probably, and they don't realize and stuff that these guys are watching and they're waiting and they're coming up with their own stuff too, on the side. So the best thing that you can do is just learn how to pay attention and navigate this CTI ecosystem and watch for things as they come about. No,
that's very interesting. You mentioned some very good points. If we could expand, for example, for companies that are more, let's say, on the top of the vulnerability threat landscape, have a good patching system. I really like on the top of vulnerability related stuff. For those cases where, and I'm gonna flip to key V list now. Mm-hmm. So on this, it's not even there. It's sometimes not even have a CV associated to it yet, but they know it's coming or just dropped. If they have like a really good system or framework to really be on the top of vulnerability, what kind of signals they could look, for example, on dark web forums or Telegram channels, like how they could monitor to really on that fine edge of being on the top of it, they still can prioritize what's going to be the first one to patch and the second one, so on and so forth.
That's a great question too. So I'll tell you about how my team and I does it. Okay. We have this tool. It's called Dark Owl. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before,
no.
But what a fantastic tool. It works so good. I use it for a lot of different things. I monitor organizational mentions and stuff on the dark web and Telegram chats, all sorts. I monitor email domains, website mentions, all sorts of different things. And they're not shy about what their data sources are and where they pull their data. So it's very, very helpful. One thing that they have in there as it pertains to vulnerability management is you can do a CVE based search, right? Mm-hmm. So as new, like case in point, this brand new Linux vulnerability, copy fail, that's what it's called. That's the one I was talking about just a second ago. Not packed to the root, but this new one that that just popped in, right? Right after I publish the report and I kick this out to my customers, the second thing I do is I go take a look at that CVE and do the CVE-based search, using Dark Owl. And from there, I'm able to see exactly what the appetite from threat actors is based off of the different Telegram channels, based off of the different forums and stuff, who's talking about it. If it's on, like let's hypothetically say something like dark forums or some of the other dark web channels and they're already talking about it, then they're already asking for, hey, does anybody have a POC for this yet? Hey, did anybody test the POC that came in with this vulnerability already? Hey, could we do this? Can we do, like who's got something that's weaponized for this already? Like I'm seeing that in real time. That is what I use. And that criteria is what I use to tell some of my larger customers, like, hey, there's a lot of chatter about this vulnerability right now. They're talking about it. Apparently somebody has a weaponizer up for sale for it. You should probably, if you haven't patched this already, you should probably P1 this as soon as possible. And this is why, or you need to probably implement or put these mitigations in place right away. So Dark Owl does a phenomenal job at that. We've been partners with Dark Owl now for 3 years or so, and I couldn't be a more happier customer, to be honest with you. They're a great organization. It's a great tool, and it gives you that granularity. So
that's awesome.
A lot of good stuff with that. So that's basically how I stay kind of at the cutting edge, and that's how I'm able to watch and maintain some level of persistence mm-hmm. on what the threat actors are saying about this, right?
Great testimonial. That's awesome. And switching gears a little bit, when it comes to phishing, for example, the techniques being used, tactics, TTPs for phishing, if you will. What are you seeing like for the most prevalent ones, like recommendations and insights, if you see any like changes on that type of TTP? Any new things around that?
Well, I think right now, if I had to pick 3, and this is the 3 that I brief my SOC every morning during our morning stand-up, we are very much so on the alert for, in this order too, device code phishing right now is kind of a big deal. it was a really big deal 2.5, 3 weeks ago when everybody all of a sudden started learning about this brand new phishing kit called Evil Tokens, where it's able to throw device code phishing emails out there at scale. And threat actors, a lot of threat actors, really switched over to using that, primarily because if you can steal the refresh token and the access token and all those different things, like, you are king at that point. You basically own that machine, you own that device that you just popped, so, and then what really kind of shook a lot of the CTI ecosystem too with that was when people started talking about Venom, the other, device code phishing as a service that just kind of popped up. But that one's used against executives, which is why everybody started really talking about it. We actually published our device code phishing intelligence bulletin. That's kind of our flagship product. A week prior to Bleeping Computer putting out the thing on Evil Tokens, I think they got caught up with something else. Usually they don't miss things and stuff that come about, but I'll tell you, Abnormal Security put together a really, really, really good report on Venom, and I think Sequoia did a great job of talking specifically about Evil Tokens and everybody else. So you put two and two together, those two right there, just Evil Tokens and Venom, very, very interesting to see. But it kind of follows the natural, maturation of what we've been seeing with device code phishing. If you recall, earlier this year, Shiny Hunters was, of course, throwing some device code phishing, emails and stuff out there as well. But what are they really after? What do all these things really have in common? Well, they want your access token, or two, they want to register themselves on your Entra. They want what you have, which is placement and access into the organization. And no matter what kind of phishing you're looking at, that's kind of the key right there, is placement and access, right? Yeah. You can get placement and access, meaning you can own this account and establish persistence there. Well, what can you do? Well, if you're Shiny Hunters, you can go dump every SaaS that you got in there. If you're an initial access broker that's just throwing device code, you're a proud user of Evil Tokens. You can go get persistence. You can go steal an account and stuff in the live refresh. You can go establish persistence, and then you can go sell that on the dark web, like dark forums or somewhere else, right? Yeah. If you're a ransomware operator or a ransomware affiliate of some sort, well, you get access to that account. You could start swimming around and start dumping domain controllers, depending on your capabilities and skill sets. You can get in there and you got your beachhead, you got your foothold, so yeah. I think we haven't seen the last of device code phishing. I think that it's going to improve, it's going to upgrade, and it's going to get better and better, because it's now become like kind of the thing. We remember when ClickFix started coming about. ClickFix was a huge thing. Why? Yeah. Because people fell for it. Yeah. The same rules apply with device code phishing, because people fall for it. It's that easy. Yeah. The second one that I'm seeing a lot of too is teams-based phishing. Teams-based phishing, Teams phishing, right? That one is interesting too. People still, somehow or some, I know my customers don't, thank God, because we've been talking about this for 2.5 years, right? So teams-based phishing, right? A lot of people still feel that if you're on Microsoft Teams, you probably have a good intent. If you're using Microsoft Teams, you're probably here for official business. You're vetted. It's something, people feel safe there. I guess that's what it is. It's a safe room or a safe space, But that's exactly why you had groups like Storm 1811. That's why these guys were became so prolific. It was new. It worked. It was highly effective. Now what we're seeing with teams-based phishing is it's really interesting. Either it's one group doing it all with a whole wide variety of different tools, or it's many, many, many different groups that are using a tried and true attack chain, and they all are coming to the table with different tools and different capabilities and different payloads and different motives and different intent. But the fact of the matter is, there's a reason why my team and we write what we call the Patching the Human Firewall blog. Is because we catch these things and we start to see, hey, this is a trend here. So let's put this out there in our Patching the Human Firewall blog. because right now, and we actually just talked about callback phishing. That's the third one I was going to bring about. We're seeing a lot of that too. I'm a firm believer in, if you put something in front of your average user and say, hey, this is bad, report this if you see it, there's a good chance that they are going to report it if they see it. If you tell people that not everybody on teams is got your best interest or our organization's best interest in mind, and this is kind of what we're seeing, as soon as that happens, you're gonna pique their vigilance.
Yeah.
They will remember. People will remember. This is bad. Watch out for it. So on the most part, I'm not saying like this is the surefire way to protect your organization, but I'll tell you what, it's definitely a very smart thing to do to keep your workforce informed. About what's the latest and greatest is. So that's kind of how I see that. Callback phishing is unique. What we're seeing with callback phishing is very unique. We're seeing a lot of the different, I would say, just services out there like no reply at azure.com getting abused to get a callback phishing email in front. It's gonna pass through everybody's email filters. It's gonna land in their inbox, and that's the key. If it works, if I can get this in front of somebody with the intent that that there's a chance that they may call back this number, I will take something like that and send it out at scale if I'm the threat actor. Yeah. Somebody is going to call that number on there. But the emails themselves are benign for callback phishing. It's the number that you got to watch for, right? Yeah. But we're going to continue to see variations of that. I think the most recent one I just seen was with GitHub. So it was like, ooh, this is smart, And these guys are getting better at this too, whether it's a callback phishing, you're past due on this bill-based, lure, or it's we noticed some interestingness on your account. You need to do this and call this number, or what was it? The Robinhood one was really interesting that we seen. That really wasn't callback phishing; that was legit phishing, on that one. But it was kind of the same themes, the same theme and stuff behind it. But at the end of the day, it's all about, can I get this in front of a user? Can I dupe them into following this lure? Can I bait them into doing it? And that's what all three of these things have in common. On a more interesting note, back to device code phishing, the other thing that we're seeing a lot too is the abuse of workers.dev, pages.dev, Versal.app. There's so many more. I think I just read about Kush.ai or Quse.ai this morning, and we're seeing a lot of these these website builder apps and stuff being abused. Well, why? Because most of the time they're not really blocked, and two, it's burnable infrastructure that if Cloudflare schwacks my fake Microsoft landing page on workers.dev, okay, I'll just go put up another one. Yep. And I don't have to pay to register that on some GTLD, at this point, or on Namecheap or any of that stuff, right? Yep. So, these things, they enable the threat actors and stuff to essentially save money and do things at scale, So that's the other interesting piece, to this too. I did a Patching the Human Firewall blog on this, I think about a year ago, when we were talking about generic top-level domains and, country code top-level domains being persistently abused and stuff when it comes to phishing or just, I don't know, malvertising, or pick one, but that really did, kind of change the landscape, where instead of spending a lot of money on a .com that's hosting something malicious there, now you can spend $5 and register it on Namecheap or some one of the other name silo or something like that, and if you lose it, oh well, $5, I'm out.
Doesn't matter,
whatever it costs to register this domain on this GTLD. And that's the other thing, though. We're going to see a lot more GTLDs come about. They've really moved the goalpost, I think, when it comes to phishing and malvertising and everything else and stuff that's sitting out there. The abuse of GTLDs. We see them all the time. I see them all the time personally.
Yeah, no, that's a great information. Thank you. The what I would say from a phishing standpoint. So you mentioned all these new phishing techniques or the way threat actors are kind of changing. Actually, because the industry is changing from being more efficient and blocking quote unquote traditional phishing, right? So they obviously need to like change the way they're trying to do things on their side as well. So I think Intel 471 came up with the report. They're seeing like services being offered in the dark web for like call operators, right? So basically, if you don't have, if you're just if you just have the knowledge to do one of the components of the whole end-to-end phishing campaign, you can rent part of those services. You don't have ways to deliver. Do you see this like becoming on the phishing side something like as big as quote unquote normal to see as ransomware as a service, for example, like phishing as a service?
Well, I think a lot of these things, they all, whether it's the paid caller service or the new phishing kits, throw in device code phishing, they all have one thing in common. People understand that there's a market for this. And the dark web is really, really good about saying, hey, there's a market for this, and this is this is how it is. Like, there's a lot of entrepreneurship in cybercrime. So
that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah,
there really is, and these guys are, if you can find a way to monetize, some of the things behind, some of the things and stuff that enable you to, steal more people's credentials or enable you to establish more initial access in different organizations. And you have a good tool, but you don't have a workforce. Well, why don't you just hire the workforce to deploy your tool? And that's kind of the concept behind ransomware as a service. It's have a great encryptor. And I think that Black Cat and Elfie had a really good offering behind that and stuff. They put a lot of focus on the leadership aspect and the management of their ransomware as a service, and they had a good encryptor. That's one. If you are a brand new ransomware as a service offering right now, it's going to be very challenging for you to compete with some of these ransomware groups like Killin. And some of these other like long-standing veterans, groups and stuff and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's to answer your question and to be fully transparent and stuff. If there's a will, there's a way, and if there's a way to monetize, then we're going to build a service around it. I mean, there's no shortage of random services like this where you have people that are in most cases witting to participate in these things. And case in point, I was going through the Black Basta leak logs, and it was very, very interesting just to see, how, Storm 1811 was interacting with the ransomware operators at Black Basta. It was very, very interesting to see, the actual, the discussions between, the affiliate and the Black Basta, or vice versa and stuff on that one. But yeah, if you can find a way to hire, if you can find a way to hire and economize your service, then why wouldn't you do it? Right now, I think ReliaQuest about a couple of months back put out a really good report that's basically saying, one of the most sought after jobs right now on the dark web is an English speaking professional social engineer.
Professional social engineer. Oh my goodness.
So, and what's crazy is they're now it's branched out a little bit. It escapes me when I read this, but I'm a sponge. If you can't tell, I'm kind of a sponge.
I think we all are. Yeah.
A professional female social enginer that can speak English, and now I think they're looking at dialects too, like somebody who speaks Alabama, somebody that speaks this, or somebody that speaks that, and it really depends on the group and what they're trying to hire for. But if they're willing to put emphasis and job announcements together that look specifically for those exclusive things, that tells you exactly where they're going. bets. You know, they're hedging their bets on why spend all this money, time, and capability on trying to find a way to, you know, build an exploit for this CVE and when I could just call and ask for access instead.
Howdy. There you go.
Exactly. If I get the right charismatic person, aka my professional social engineer, then that guy is probably going to make me some money. You know, all I have to do is give him a script. All I have to do is do that. I actually had somebody from the comm that called me and was telling me about how my Coinbase was involved in a recent sanctioned transaction, and the FBI is now investigating me, or whatever their script told them. And I'm like, are you almost done with your script? You know, I'm like asking him, like, are you almost done with your script? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, you're not very good at this. You know, it's like, first off, Chief, I don't even have Coinbase. So that's one. Two, my number, I'm curious. And he's like, well, I'm like, it's okay, man. You're not going to win on this one. Okay. Well, let's have the conversation. And it was pretty interesting. I talked to this kid, and it was a kid. It was about probably 19, 24-year-old kid. Wow. And I asked him, I was asking him pretty pointed questions too. Like, I'm like, I don't even know your name, man. Who are you rolling with? Are you with Scattered Spider? Are you with the comm? Like which one? He's like, oh, I'm with the hacking comm. I'm like, okay, that's cool, man. That's almost not cool, but thank you for telling me that. He's like, well, and he told me something really interesting. He said he had some success, and they sent him a Rolex.
Holy moly!
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was fascinating. Like,
that's cartel drug dealing altogether.
And I'm like, how important is that watch when you get caught, though? Can you take it with you to prison? And he's like, well, of course not. I'm like, well, there you go. Next question. Have you been watching what's been happening to quote unquote comm affiliates that get caught? Have you been seeing that? Well, they don't just get the bars thrown against them. They get the book, they get everything, and they get heavily scrutinized by pretty much every law enforcement official. Is this really worth it? You sound young enough to make better choices. Let's talk about that. And he's like, I'm like, how about this, man? How about this for a scoring rubric? If you told your mom what you actually do for a living, what would she say to you? He's like, she wouldn't be very happy. And I'm like, well, there you go. Is this something that you would brag about to your friends? Is this something that you would just tell anybody else? Because I'll tell you what, as soon as the comm figures out, that you may not be as productive as you are, they will absolutely throw you to the wolves. This is a dog eat dog game with these guys. So you choose, man. You choose just how far you venture into this, and you still have a chance because you haven't been caught yet. But I preface with yet. You're going to get caught one day because you're going to talk to the wrong person. Today, you talk to somebody who's on the blue team that has just a bit of empathy. Okay. You may not get that the next time. You may get somebody that's savvy enough to trace your phone to figure out exactly where you are and who you are and turn it all over to law enforcement. And next thing you know, your mom has to watch you get escorted out of your house while wearing your Rolex, probably. And then it's all going to make sense to her at that point why these things were happening. Yeah,
kids don't really know what they're doing. They don't have they're not tech savvy, right? They're just following some, exactly, some quick scripts, procedures, and they have no idea what's all involved, the traces they leave and all that. That's really sad. But Brandon, man, awesome conversation. I really appreciate all the insights. Any final thoughts for the listeners?
Well, that's a
no
crazy
pressure.
Question. That's a crazy question for me. Just because I have so much to say in such little time to say these things. Number one, patch your human firewall. It's so important. It's so important to patch your human firewall. The more that your users know about what's going on, the more that they're going to be paying attention to what's happening. And I think that's super key. That's why I write the blogs that I do specifically about patching the human firewall. Second, threat actors, I would say threat actors are very much so predictably predictable in many different ways. And let me unpackage that a little bit. When I first seen ClickFix, I knew right away that this was going to be a thing. It was going to be a thing because it seems like something that a lot of people would fall for. So that natural, as a CTI, person, that natural, like, this is probably going to work really well against a lot of people, and just asking yourself that question, yes, this probably will. What can you do about it now? Well, you can take a look at something like ClickFix and in the early onsets, and you can say, okay, well, mishta.exe seems to be the thing that really sets these conditions in motion. Also, obviously, user interaction. Okay, so I need to teach my user, I need to teach the users that are within my customers how to recognize a ClickFix attack, because they all have a very similar presentation. But I also need to come up with some detections and stuff for if I see PowerShell plus, mishta.exe, in a very short amount of time, I can assume at that point somebody is getting ClickFix and stuff. If you have the right, XDR and the right detections and stuff in place, and I'd say the last thing and probably the most important thing is pay attention. Pay attention to what's happening beyond what just a few flagship CTI outlets tell you to. I probably go through at least 100 to 200 daily resources a day. I go down to the vendors, I go down to the blogs on Medium, I peruse through LinkedIn, I figure out what's happening and stuff on X and all the other different echo chambers and spaces, Discord, pick one. CTI is one of those things where it does take a village. It takes people that can see different perspectives. I'm very fortunate enough to have be a part of the Ransom ISAC, a lot of very intelligent people in there. But at the same time, I'm very fortunate to be a part of other different channels and other different echo chambers where you see what everybody else is seeing, at the same time. You only have one set of eyes, but if you can build a coalition of like-minded people that all kind of have the same intent, is how do we get ahead of this before, we have to get in front of it, then you're cooking with gas. So, and it's important. It takes a village. It takes a village, essentially. So Absolutely. Those are my final thoughts.
And I could not agree more. It takes a village. Brendan, thank you so much. I really appreciate bringing all your knowledge to the show and insights to the listeners. And I hope we'll see you around. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Got thoughts or questions? Connect with us on our LinkedIn group, Cyber Threat Intelligence Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone with CTI expertise that would like to be interviewed in the show, just let us know. Until next time, stay sharp and stay secure.